All right, everyone, welcome back to another tier list. This one's going to be for the 1970s heavyweight golden age, my favorite era of heavyweight boxing at the very least. Before we dive in, let me go ahead and explain the tiers and how I rank things. C, down here in green, is below average. B is about average. A is good. S is great. And Z is greatest, one of a kind, perhaps. So the 70s has a really high bar set. Honestly, this might turn out to be the first list where there's more than one Z tier. Don't quote me on that. I'll decide as we go along, I suppose. It looks like the first fight up is the first Joe Frazier-Jimmy Ellis fight. There's a lot of meat to unpack with this one that is perhaps better than the fight itself. It goes back to Muhammad Ali's exile in '67. Then the WBA tournament that Jimmy Ellis won. Joe Frazier won the NYSAC title. The WBC title became vacant. Then they signed him meat for a February 16th, 1970 date. Fun fact, George Foreman fought on the undercard too. The fight itself, Frazier dominated Ellis. A picture-perfect knockout too. As a matter of fact, it's so cool that it's in my original intro. Muhammad Ali, before this fight, officially announced his retirement so that they could fight for the Ring Magazine title and thus the lineage too, but he came back during this year. So, in my opinion at least, the lineage returned to him. Not the Ring Magazine title, but the lineage. Those two titles are not mutually exclusive. So, with that being said, this fight, Frazier versus Ellis, it's not below average. Or is it compared to the other fights on this list? Let me think about that. I'm going to put it in B for now, about average. It's not a bad fight at all. It's just, it was so, Frazier was the star of the show, right? Ellis didn't really make it all that competitive. And he's not a huge name from the time either, so. We'll leave it about there. Up next, the Thriller in Manila is already up. So this list is really putting me on the spot for where I'm going to have to make a decision here about the Thriller in Manila. That is the third fight between Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier from 1975. Very entertaining. A buffet of brain damage, as I've seen some people put it. All the bad blood and story behind it stems all the way back to 1967. Again, with Ali's exile. It seems that is the origin point of many things when it comes to this era. They just all revolve around the greatest. But Muhammad Ali thought Joe Frazier was shot. He thought very wrong. Frazier put on a great performance. I think he used up the rest of what he had in his career tank. I think I said that in the 70s timeline too. Ali, of course, pulled it out. He didn't train accordingly, but y'all know how he is. He always finds a way, doesn't he? So, great fight. And I mean great fight. The heat was killing both men. They were bashing each other's brains in. I got to make a decision. I don't think I forgot to say anything else about it too. Oh, yeah. It was the rubber match. Frazier won the first, Ali won the second. And by this time, Ali was the champion and he was everybody's hero. For now, I'm going to stick it in. That's tough, man. This could be the one Z tier, but I think I'll decide on the Z tier in the end. Let's move on to Foreman and Lyle. If the last one was a buffet of brain damage, this one was a straight car crash, or just carnage incarnate. These two caved each other's skulls in. George Foreman was on the comeback. Ron Lyle was on the come up. I think Lyle had already had his fight against Ali too, so he was also on the comeback. And before this, Lyle had another buffet of brain damage against Ernie Shavers. Lyle, Shavers, and Foreman are probably the three hardest hitters. Actually, they are the three hardest hitters from the 70s and three of the hardest hitters of all time, at least for the heavyweights. And Lyle won that fight, and it looked like he was going to beat Big George too, but George showed he showed he was greater. If you haven't seen this fight before, you are missing out. You must, I repeat, you must watch this fight in full. Every round, the entire broadcast. It's available here on YouTube. And you can also catch it in my 70s timeline. With that being said, oh man, this is an S tier fight too. Because this is so rewatchable. It doesn't even matter if you know the result, honestly. It's just very exciting. So I'm actually going to go ahead and place it in S tier as well. Up next, that looks like the Battle of the Gladiators, the rematch between George Foreman and Joe Frazier from 1976, also the same year. This fight took place after Foreman and Lau. So after Foreman proved himself in having to rise off the canvas, he's up against Frazier again, where he gets to prove he's still the dominant force in the division as he's on his way back after the Rumble in the Jungle in Zaire. And he did just that again. Frazier was more defensive this time, and he stayed back. He did his best, but it's just a stylistic matchup for old Smokin' Joe, and George Foreman dominated him again. Not to the extent he dominated him in the first one, in the Sunshine Showdown, but he dominated him again. But all in all, it's not a crazy exciting fight. Is it more exciting than Frazier Ellis? Probably. I'll stick it in B for now. That looks like the third Ali Norton fight in Yankee Stadium. A fight many believe that Norton to have won. So the trilogy sealer, the rubber match. Ken Norton, I've called him Muhammad Ali's kryptonite as far back as 2021. I don't know if anyone else did it before that, but I think here on YouTube, I hold that one. But anyway, Norton, especially against this 70s version of Ali, it seems he just had his number, man. And this Ali in 1976, I'm not going to say he was shot, but he certainly wasn't the same man he was even 2 years earlier in Zaire, even 1 year earlier in Manila. This is not the same guy. He's fallen off hard. Norton knew that. Norton capitalized. And many believe Norton did enough to win the heavyweight title on this night. They believed it was a robbery. With that being said, the fight itself, it isn't crazy exciting, at least not in my opinion. It isn't one I go back to rewatch often. You know, there's no knockdowns, none of that, blah, blah, blah. With that being said, it's a pretty important fight, narratively, for the decade, you know, because it's Ali and Norton. But I think I would actually put this, it's either B or C. Honestly, I think I'm going to put it here in C. I would watch both of these before I'd watch this fight. That may not be the case for you, but it is for me. Up next is Foreman and Young, Big George's Twilight, in the beginning of 1977 in San Juan, Puerto Rico. George didn't take the fight seriously. It was nothing but a formality for him as he was on his way to getting a rematch with Muhammad Ali, and he paid the price for it. Jimmy Young came to box, and he did just that. And he survived nearly being stopped at one point too, and Jimmy said after the fight even he didn't know how he survived. So you really got to give old Jimmy Young some credit there. One of the most robbed, perhaps underappreciated fighters of the era, and he beat a fighter who was greater than him here, and he banished George to retirement for a decade at least. George returned as an old man. That's a story for a different day, which you can catch in the 90s timeline. But the fight itself, it's exciting, and Young did knock George down. Young himself was stunned badly. Again, though, it's not a fight I go back to watch a lot. I'll place it here in C for now. That looks like Ali Shavers. To me, Muhammad Ali versus Ernie Shavers in 1977, that was Ali's last hurrah. Because right after that, he lost to Spinks, and then he won it back from Spinks. But there against Shavers, and some believe he lost that fight. I don't personally. I think he performed well enough with the limited skills and ability that he had left. With that being said, it's an exciting enough fight. Again, it's not one I commonly rewatch. I will rewatch it. But I might have to put it down here too. Because again, the bar is so high here in the 70s for great fights, you know. I want to be straight and honest with that. Up next, that looks like Norton and Young. That was an eliminator bout to see who would become the number one contender for the WBC title. Ultimately, because Leon Spinks chose to rematch Muhammad Ali, he was stripped of that title. So Norton was awarded it retroactively for winning this fight against Jimmy Young, which was a clashing of styles. Normally, Norton was the pickle to Jimmy Young's style, which kind of favored Muhammad Ali's style. But Jimmy Young was younger, had more in the tank, was very motivated. Jimmy Young was in the position Ken Norton was back in 1973 when he beat Muhammad Ali. And it ended up being a pretty good fight. Some people believe Young should have won the fight. Yet another robbery on Young's resume, perhaps. Ultimately, Norton got it. Who do you think won it? I'd like to hear your opinion in the comments. That being said, it's not a crazy exciting fight, in my opinion at least. It isn't all that. That's definitely down here in C as well. I don't know if this is the first or the second. I'm going to say it's the first Ali Spinks fight. So this is the one where the novice with 7 fights, I think he only had 7 fights, upset the master. Leon Spinks gets handpicked, perhaps cherry-picked, to face Muhammad Ali for the heavyweight title, and he beats Muhammad Ali. Now there's a conspiracy going around, one that Ken Norton himself believed to the end of his days, may he rest in peace, that Muhammad Ali lost this fight on purpose so that he wouldn't have to fight Ken Norton for a 4th time. What do you believe on that? Norton himself believed it was true. He said so in an interview. I don't know how I feel about it. Would Muhammad Ali intentionally do something like this? Or would he lose on purpose? I don't know. Like, are we taking away from Leon Spinks's accomplishment? You know, this was Vegas Spinks, right? Like, there's Tokyo Douglas, the one that upset Tyson in 1990. This is Vegas Spinks, where he was the best ever in his career so early on, only 7 fights, and he became heavyweight champion. Fun fact, his bodyguard was Mr. T as well. Anyway, as far as the fight goes, it's actually not a boring fight. It's pretty interesting to watch and even to rewatch because Spinks is such a punching machine, and Ali got his into, and it's a cool fight. You know what? So this is tough because I'm not a huge fan of this fight. I actually prefer Ali Shavers over this fight here. I think I'm going to give this first fight between them a B, though. And I may move Ali Shavers to B as well, because I definitely watch Ali Shavers over Norton and Young. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll go ahead and move Ali Shavers up to B for now. Up next, that looks like the first fight between Larry Holmes and Ernie Shavers. This one was Larry Holmes' testing grounds, his proving grounds. Are you the real deal? Do you belong in the title scene? He had a lot to prove back then in 1978, early 1978. And he did just that by overcoming a proven contender in Ernie Shavers, who, again, some thought he beat Muhammad Ali. It was a pretty good fight, very exciting. Larry survived getting hit. I don't think he was in too much trouble. Neither man was in a crazy amount of trouble in this fight. And this is only their first fight. Wait till we talk about the second one. That being said, it's a cool fight, but I'm actually going to put it in C. I think the rematch is better. We'll get to that. Up next, this is Norton and Holmes for the WBC title. Norton's first title defense after he was awarded the belt. I like to call this fight Ali Frazier 4. The reason is because you got Holmes, who was Ali's protege, and you got Norton, who sparred with Frazier, and he was Ali's kryptonite. It's Ali Frazier 4, at least in my little headcanon, in my mind. This is one of the greatest fights, not just of the 70s, but of all time. Competitive, bell to bell, pillar to post. They went to town on one another. Of course, Norton started strong, he started slow, like Frazier, but as Larry piled on the points and slowed, Norton, like Frazier, came back. And speaking of which, too, Larry starting strong and piling up the points. That's how Ali was, too, right? So, great fight, back and forth, bashing each other, neither man giving in. Neither man went down, but that's a testament to how great the fight was as opposed to it being any sort of boring. This fight here, this is an S-tier fight as well. If you've never seen this fight before, Ken Norton versus Larry Holmes, 1978 for the WBC title, go check it out. Ooh, look what's up next. That's the fight of the century. Now before I even explain anything, this is a Z-tier candidate. No question about it. None at all. So some background on it. Frazier and Ali, the first fight, the fight of the century. Again, stems from Ali's exile. Frazier helped Ali out in his exile, like he gave him money, helped him live. Ali came back, sold the fight like crazy. Frazier felt betrayed with the insults Ali threw his way. He was like, dude, like, you don't need to sell the fight. The tickets and our money, like, our money's guaranteed. So why are you insulting me the way you are? However you choose to feel about that is up to you, viewer. And the fight from start to finish, the buildup was insane. With Ali selling the fight, Frazier brewing in rage. The aftermath was also awesome because this was the chapter, the chapter that spawned the saga of the Golden Age, in my opinion. The first great fight of the decade that led to a string of great years and times and fights. So with that being said, in this fight, these two went to town on one another, but Joe Frazier got the better of Muhammad Ali convincingly and decisively. The knockout in the final round, of which Ali did stand up from, but still, the knockout from the final round, and in their entire trilogy, this is the only time either man went down, was Frazier knocking Ali down. Yes, Ali may have come close to knocking Frazier down later in the second and third fight, though that's debatable, but this is definitive. Joe Frazier knocked down Muhammad Ali, and that was the cherry on top. It was the icing. Great fight, start to finish. A lot of people rag on their second fight for Ali doing a lot of holding. Similarly, I have a problem with this fight with Frazier hitting Ali on the hip so much, right? Which is I don't know how to describe it necessarily. I'm not going to call it dishonorably or anything, because are you really breaking a rule by doing that? No, it's not a rule in anything, but it just goes to show that he couldn't keep up with him if he let him dance, right? So he's going to hit him on the hips, not against the rules. Wouldn't you do it? You probably would too. But with that being said, great fight. Z-tier candidate. I will decide at the end where or who's going to get the Z tier here in S tier. So far, it's only between these two right now. The first Frazier Ali fight and the third. Let's move on. That's the Ali Spinks rematch, which I think may be a bit more exciting because Ali appeared in better shape. He came to play. Spinks was no pushover again. And it was a good fight from start to finish. It was exciting. And the ending is very emotional with Ali waving goodbye and kissing goodbye to the crowd. It's almost like everybody collectively came together. Spinks himself did. Spinks, Ali was Spinks' hero too. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and give the rematch between Ali and Spinks an A, because it is better than the first. Now I have to think about, though, is the second Ali Spinks match better than these fights here and better than Ali Shavers? Decide later. That looks like, is that? Oh, that's Ken Norton and Ernie Shavers. I saw Larry Holmes up top, but that's against a team against Ozzy Ocasio. Norton and Shavers, wipe out. Ken Shavers, dummy. Ernie Shavers, all the way. Absolute wipeout, knocks Norton out viciously, too. Norton was definitely on Dream Street there. And I think this fight was one of the signals, too, that Norton's peak, it was over. I think the end of his peak was the fight against Larry Holmes. That being said, it's exciting. Watch it. It's over quick, but it's nothing special. So I'm going to put it down here and see. It looks like Larry Holmes and Mike Weaver. This is a bit of a touch of the 80s here, right? Because Holmes and Weaver are perhaps more famous for their 80s accomplishments, but they did have a WBC title match in 1979, which is right there heading into 1980. And Weaver put on a pretty good show. I think he even had Larry in trouble at some points, but ultimately it was Larry who dropped Mike Weaver. Pretty exciting fight. Very enjoyable. Very rewatchable. I'm going to give it a B. Up next, the rematch between Holmes and Shavers. This time, it was for the title, the WBC title. Very much more exciting than the first. Again, it looked like Larry was in control, but then bang, that overhand right put him down, and you're like, what's it going to do? What's going to happen? Like a zombie. In Michael Jackson's Thriller, Larry gets back up, composes himself, survives, and then comes back to take back control of the fight. Just proving himself as an all-time great. Similarly to how Tyson Fury got up against Deontay Wilder in that first fight. That being said, I think this one's an A, too. Very exciting fight. The Sunshine Showdown, the first fight between Joe Frazier and George Foreman. George Foreman shocks the world, shakes the world up. Joe didn't take George as seriously as he should have. He didn't train as seriously as he should have. He thought, and perhaps not just him, but many people believed that George's resume was inflated. He had a lot of knockouts, but not against really any top names. Depending on how you look at it, because he did have a name like George Chuvalo on his record, right? George Chuvalo is a pretty good fighter. But as nervous as George claims he was, man, the way he was staring through Joe, and he came in and he dropped Joe 6 times across only 2 rounds, 3 knockdowns in each round individually. The fight was stopped because Joe, to his credit, would not stay down. What a fighting champion. And suddenly George Foreman was heavyweight champion, and it really looked like Muhammad Ali was never getting that belt back. I tell you that. I certainly would have believed the same if I was around back then. I'm like, oh yeah, he's cooked. George is never losing this belt. Very exciting fight, very rewatchable. If you haven't watched it, what the hell are you watching this for? Let me spoil it for you. Go watch this fight right now. I am one who will put it in S tier. I know there's some of you who will say it's a one-sided fight. It's not that exciting. It's not competitive. That's not how I do my list. So don't whine and bitch about it down below. S tier. This looks like the first Ali Norton fight. Norton shakes up the world, shocks the world by beating a Muhammad Ali who was on quite the win streak. He was on his way back, trying to secure that rematch for the heavyweight title with Joe Frazier initially, but right before this, about 2 months before this, the fight I just talked about happened, so now George Foreman's a champion. And then Ken Norton comes and breaks Ali's jaw, seemingly just sends him right back to the bottom of the ladder. Go back and climb again, and suddenly we have a new contender. Ken Norton emerges as a new contender, and that would pay dividends later on too, but we'll get to that fight. Other than that, not a bad fight. Rewatchability, not much for me personally. I'm not crazy for the Ali Norton trilogy like everybody else is. They are good fights, but they're not crazy, in my opinion. With that being said, we'll go ahead and put Ali Norton. It's pretty significant. We'll give it a B. Here's a rematch, the revenge battle of the broken jaw. I think it's a little bit more exciting because Norton is even better in this fight against an Ali who turned back the clocks as best as he could. I think this is the best Ali looked in the 70s, with him dancing for most of the rounds, but it still wasn't enough to forge a gap between he and Norton. Ali did win this one, but it was still close. Some believe Norton won this fight too, right? It's kind of hard to argue with him too, because Norton just had Ali's number. That being said, it is a little better. It's probably still a B tier fight though. I'll put it in A. This is the best one of the trilogy in my opinion, because the third fight's a robbery. The first one is good, but Ali's not at his best. Norton, to me, out of the trilogy, despite how well he performed in that third fight, Norton, to me, and Ali, to me, both of them were at their best in this fight here. And you can make the case, too, that Norton won this fight, too. Up next, this is the rematch between Frazier and Ali, which took place 3 years later to start 1974. This time around, Ali, just like in this second Norton fight, he came to dance, stuck to the game plan, and he gave Joe Frazier fits. A lot of people complain about him holding Joe behind the head. I think that's an excuse still. As some of you would say, for me, with Frazier hitting Ali on the hips in the first, that's an excuse, TCJ. Look, the holding behind the head. And Ali did this to George Foreman, too, actually, when they fought. But we'll get to that. It wasn't called. I guess so be it, right? With that being said, this is the least exciting of the trilogy. So, hats off to Ali for avenging his loss. Yeah, sure. And it's a good fight, but it ain't great. That being said, A or B. It's got to be somewhere in here. Here. We'll put it in A for now. I may change my mind That looks like Foreman and Norton, heavyweight title, 1974. Foreman's second title defense, I believe. The first one was against Jose Roman. Who organized that mismatch? But anyway, against here, Norton, it looked like another mismatch because he handled Norton as dominantly as he did Frazier. And those were the two men who beat Muhammad Ali and beat him convincingly too. So it's looking like, man, ain't no way Muhammad getting the belt back, man. There's just no way, right? Very good, rewatchable, exciting fight. I'm going to give it an A. Up next, the Rumble in the Jungle. Arguably the greatest fight of the decade. Maybe even all time. Like this, the build-up, the story behind it, which you've gotten laced from me here with Ali losing to Frazier and Norton and then Foreman dominating them and Ali not looking like the same man who was the dominant champion in the 60s. And then he just shakes up the world 10 years later again, just like he did against Sonny Liston, who, fun fact, was George Foreman's sparring partner and mentor of sorts. So he did it again 10 years later. Same thing. So second verse, same as the first. This is an S-tier fight. Some of you will complain, no, it's not an S-tier fight. It's not that exciting. It's pretty one-sided. All blah, blah, blah. Nah, it's an S-tier fight, in my opinion. The build-up, the excitement of the fight itself. It's not a boring fight either, for anyone who wants to say that. The explosive start, the story of George being worn down, the psychological warfare, the knockout in the end, right? There's a lot of people who talk about, oh, well, it was the heat and the psychology. Dude, excuses. You can't make excuses for it. George himself gave credit to Ali, still gives credit to him today. Now that Ali is gone, it's a great fight, arguably the greatest. And the final fight here to be ranked looks to be, Shavers and Lyle, a firefight, one of my favorites. Endless rewatch value. If you haven't watched this one, if you want to watch it before you watch Foreman and Lyle, I recommend you do that. Watch these two fights successively. Watch Shavers and Lyle and then watch Foreman and Lyle. With that being said, Lyle bounces back from being just absolutely having his head spun around and saved by the bell, and he comes back to score a nasty knockout on Shavers. One that honestly looked like Shavers was dead. If I'm just being honest with you, the way that he slouch steps to punches the referee taking too long to step in. That being said, A-tier fight. I don't think it's as good as Foreman Lyle. All right. We've got a decision to make. I'm going to introduce something new here at the end of these two, where I'm actually going to rank the fights, how they're organized here in tier. So, say for example, just because two fights are in B tier, I may think one fight is better. For example, I'll do this right now. I am more so soon to watch Foreman Frazier 2 than I am Frazier and Jimmy Ellis. Why isn't it moving? There you go. Right. As for Ali Shavers, I think I'd watch Frazier Ellis before Ali Shavers. Probably just because it's quicker, like and more explosive. And these are in the right order. Holmes, Weaver, Ali. Okay, yeah, these can stay the way they are. Let's take a look at C. Ali Norton 3. Is Ali Norton 3 better than Foreman Young? Which one would I watch? Honestly, I'd probably watch Foreman Young before Ali Norton 3. I'm just not big on the Ali Norton trilogy. Norton and Young, I'd watch Ali Norton 3 before that. Holmes Shavers 1, I'd watch that before Norton and Young and before Ali Norton 3. And then you got Norton and Shavers. This is supposed to be Shavers and Holmes 1, by the way, too. I don't know if I said that wrong. I'd watch Norton and Shavers before Norton and Young as well. Let's move on to A. That's Ali Spinks 2. I would definitely watch Holmes Shavers 2 before that. Ali Norton 2. These are pretty even. I'll put it before Ali Spinks, yeah. The second fight between Ali and Frazier. Yeah. That's better than Ali Spinks, but is it better than Ali Norton 2? I don't know about that. Foreman and Norton. Yeah, that's going up here. That's second best. And then lastly, Shavers and Lyle. Yeah, that's moving up too. So this is how I would order things here. So you got A1, A2, A3, A4, A5, A6. Now for S tier. I don't know why I keep scrolling like that. S tier. Oh, excuse me. And we need to decide who's going to take that coveted Z tier. But first, let's go ahead and rank them. The Thrilla Manila staying up front so far. Yep, still staying up front. Is Norton Holmes better than Foreman Lyle? For me, oh man, that's tough. But no, I'd watch Foreman Lyle first. The fight of the century. Yes, that is ascending both of these. We're going to leave these here for now because I'm going to decide between these two. The Sunshine Showdown. Yes, I would watch the Sunshine Showdown before Norton and Holmes. And then the Rumble in the Jungle. Yes, that's going to go up here too. So to me, the Z tier is between these three fights. Ali Frazier 1 or 3 or Ali Foreman. The Rumble in the Jungle was the culmination of that story. Everything after that was just a really good bonus. The fight of the century. You talk about surpassing the hype. What other thing, event, or person or whatever can you think of that blows the hype out of the water? I can actually think of one. I'll say this. LeBron James's career. And no, I don't think he's the greatest basketball player ever. I think he's in a conversation. But he's someone who definitely surpassed the hype and the expectations. At least in my opinion. Then you have the Thrilla in Manila. This is really, really tough. Manila, of course, being a bonus after the story ends in the Rumble in the Jungle, with Joe Frazier saying, "It ain't over till the fat lady sings, baby, I'm still in it." And his corner stopped that fight. He wanted to keep going. If you know me, you know that I personally believe that Manila is better than the fight of the century. Is Manila better than the Rumble in the Jungle? There's definitely going to be a skip here in this video. I'll have it right after I say this here. To where I finally pick. I gotta go with the Rumble in the Jungle. Just barely. Like, I almost want to do this. Right? 2 Z tiers. Maybe even 3 Z tiers. Right? But I try to reserve Z tier for just one. And there can only be one. So, this is my list. Very tough to decide here in the end. How would you rank these fights? You can click the link in the pinned comment or in the description. And you can tag me on social media with your picture of how you rank the fights. I would like to see. Hit me up with it. I hope you enjoyed this 1970s heavyweight fights tier list. Like, subscribe, join, which is to become a member if you like early access and other superior benefits. I appreciate you for your time. Thanks for coming out. This has been the Charles Jackson, author of the Boxing Encyclopedia. And I'll see you next time around. Happy New Year.